All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, down there in Decula, Georgia. Matt Green himself. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back. Second day, that's all I got to say. We're saying the second weekend of college football. It's just, yeah, man, it's good stuff. How was your weekend?
Oh, it was up and down. I'm not going to lie. Yesterday was a lot. I did nothing but schoolwork for several hours, and then more wedding stuff to wrap up the night. And got the wedding marriage license early this morning, so that's all done. And you're getting in. There's just a lot of stuff from now until the big day this weekend. So my plate is full. My plate is full, Matt Green. I'm going to be very excited to be in the mountains, pushed away in a cottage on Sunday afternoon, and have all this off my plate. But a lot to do, but we survived. So day later on this recording, like I said yesterday, it was just I only could watch the first half of the Falcons game in a blur, and then I had to watch the rest early this morning in bits and pieces. So it was a lot. It was a lot. So I'm glad that we're able to still make this happen today on the program, Matt Green. Did you, in all honesty, because obviously I watched all of Tennessee and Pitt on Saturday afternoon, but for you, in all honesty, Matt Green, did you sit from beginning to end and watch Georgia-Samford every snap?
Well, actually, shout out to Spectrum, one of the few things they do right. Mm-hmm. Well, when you know they're doing it, it's awesome. But when it's unpredictable, it sucks, and it's thrown me off at times. But for some reason, sometimes the show you have flashed back on will stay put and not be in live time. So this has messed me up at times because I'm like, oh, I thought this game was in the fourth quarter. It's like at halftime. Oh, okay, whatever. And whatever. There's a lot of games, and you might forget which ones you're watching. So this worked out for me because at every commercial break for Georgia, I would just flip over to Pitt, Tennessee, and then essentially get caught up with that, and fast forward through some stuff, and then be able to watch all that. Go. So I was really able to get almost all of these games because I'm not going to miss my team, even though the fourth quarter of the Georgia game, they agreed to play 12-minute quarters. I don't know if you saw that.
Did they?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that in a college game before, but I know you've seen high school, they'll agree to have a running clock, fourth quarter, a 10-minute fourth quarter or something.
I was there for week one when the team did it.
Yeah, so I think Hatchett, I want to say, is Samford's head coach. That was the guy who gave Kirby his first ever job. He's the head coach at Valdosta State. And Muschamp was DC on that staff, and Kirby was got the job of coaching DBs. So I think there's an element of that. Georgia's up 30-0 at halftime. He's not trying to rub it in on his old mentor, So yeah, the 12-minute quarter thing. So once that fourth quarter hit, then I was able to actually flip around and see not only Pitt, Tennessee, but then the other games that were finishing up at that time.
There you go. Well, a little bit of stuff to mention before we jump into this week's games and the Green Line side of the weekend. Don't forget, folks, you can check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe. Check out all of our full episodes you can watch on YouTube. If you're more of a visual watcher for podcasts, you can do that, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. You can also listen to us on Apple, Spotify, all your favorite podcast platforms. But please, please, please make sure that you leave the show a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you have not already done so, make sure you're also subscribed. New episodes every day in your podcast player here on the Blue Wire Pod Network. So check that out. You can also get in touch with the show at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. Email us with any college football questions, comments, anything like that about this very program for Matt or myself. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt__Green and follow the show at Pod Chase Thomas as well. Matt Green, this was
YouTube. Let me stop you right there. I think the YouTube viewers know that I'm white, but we're recording this in the middle of the day now. I got this sun right here. I'm like extra white today. So yeah, don't adjust your television set.
You are just ready for Halloween, man. Like you're ready for the spoopy season, if you will.
Exactly.
I like it. Matt Green, crazy weekend of college football. A lot happened throughout Saturday. I think we have to start, though, with your Green Line stat of the weekend. What do you have for us, Matt Green?
Yes, sir. So it segues well into your madness that was the weekend of college football. My Green Line stat of the week is that the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are the third team since 2000 to start top 5 in the preseason poll and begin the season 0-2. And so this can also set up as a trivia question for you over there. I can see the gears in motion. So who are the last 2 teams to start top 5 and start the season 0-2?
Was there an LSU team that did that?
LSU is not one of them. One of them popped out of my head. I had to look the other one up because I saw this stat at one point on the weekend, but they didn't say the teams. So I was like, I need to figure out who did this. But there's one that popped up because they dropped out of the top 25 after week 1. Texas was not one of them.
USC.
Incorrect. You want me to just tell you?
Yeah, just tell me.
2007 Michigan Wolverines.
Oh, wow.
After losing to App State, they followed it up with, I think, like a 30-9 loss to Oregon or something like that. Just got blown out. Then the 2017, the year that this great football program officially, well, the year they died. I don't know what happened to them since this year, but they've never been the same. 2017 Florida State. Started, I think, number 2 or number 3. Played Alabama in that opener. Lost DeAndre Francois. And DeAndre Francois was holding up the entire football program, apparently, because they have never been the same since. Lost to... So I think there was a hurricane. I don't know if that was Matthew that year, but they had 2 straight games postponed that year. So week 4 was their second game, and they lost to NC State. And then that was the year where they made up the UL Monroe game. So they didn't even play Miami that year. Made up the UL Monroe game the week of conference championships so they could keep that bowl streak going they had. That was like 30 straight years. Because they were like 5-6 in the season. And they decided to play on conference championship weekend just so they could go to a bowl. I thought that's just hilarious to me. Florida State's never been the same.
And even still, like when was the last bowl game for the Noles? It's been a couple years in a row now, right?
Yeah, I know I'd have to look that up. Yeah, it's definitely been a couple years. But then the bonus stat of the trivia question. There's also 2 other teams that started number 6 in the polls that also started 0-2. That was 2003 Auburn opened the year with USC, claimed a national championship. They did not actually win the national championship that year. But, yeah, they were obviously a really good team. Then they lost to Georgia Tech in week 2. And then, fun fact for you, 2010 Virginia Tech started number 6, lost to Boise State and James Madison to open the season, and won the ACC championship. Won 10 straight games after that.
Interesting.
Tyrod Taylor and the gang. But, yeah, that's what we got for the Green Line stat of the week.
They love losing those small, like, East Coast games.
They
like
lose
James
all
Madison,
of them.
Old Dominion. It doesn't matter. They do not
They
get
probably
up
played
games.
at James Madison, too. No, Virginia Tech.
Speaking of, I think James Madison's quarterback is the number 1 graded PFF quarterback to this point.
There you go.
Year 1 in FBS. They just moved up to the Fun Belt. And
it's also 2 weeks. That's who have they played so far? We'll see.
Hey. Who have they put? They beat somebody good in week 1, right? Didn't they have a weird one? I don't know. I have to pull it up. But look, it's just James Madison. It just means more in the Sun Belt. Matt Green, let's start. I feel like we have to start with Texas and Alabama. Alabama survives. We were Texan throughout this one. This is like one of those great what if games, and folks, one of the things you cannot do is like, if Quinn Ewers does not get hurt, Texas wins. We don't know. Like, Quinn Ewers could have just imploded in the second half. Quinn Ewers could have hit some sort of wall. Texas A&M or Alabama could have had any sort of adjustment in the second half to limit what they saw from Quinn in the first half, anything like that. That all being said, Quinn Ewers was dealing. Texas finally has a quarterback who you can count on, who it's like, okay, no, Quinn Ewers is the guy. He's the next Sam Ehlinger, Colt McCoy, but I think he has more upside. I think he has more upside than any Texas quarterback in a long time. I mean, Vince Young, obviously their biggest prospect ever, but Quinn Ewers, I mean, the arm talent is wild. He had a 90.2 PFF grade in this one, 21.4% big time throw rate. It was second among Power 5 quarterbacks in week 2, and that was like just before he got injured. He got injured early in this one, AC joint or something sprained, so we'll see how long he's gone. And then Hudson Card comes in, and he's on one leg too. A lot of situations where multiple quarterbacks on one leg and struggling to survive in those early slots with Pitt in Texas. And we'll get into the Pitt one in a bit, but I don't know. I was extremely impressed, and I think a lot of the jokes with Texas over the last couple of years has just been like, the offense has always been there. Like, you have the Bijan Robinsons, you have the offensive talent who keeps getting drafted. Like, they have created offense after offense that works. It's never been an offensive issue, really. It's been like how soft that Texas defense is, where they can't stop Kansas, or they can't stop Texas Tech, or they can't stop teams they should stop with the talent that they have on that side of the ball. We've never seen a Texas defense like this. Like, Charlie Strong couldn't do this. You go up and down the list, Tom Harmon and his group, they couldn't do this. Steve Sarkisian, this staff has gotten the defense to, like, make this jump. Like, there was nobody open for Alabama and Bryce Young all night. Alabama could not run the ball. They just gave up on running the ball against the Longhorns. This is a totally different Texas team than we have been accustomed to for a long time. So the jokes about, like, Texas is back, look, if this is the defense that they're going to be playing with for the foreseeable future and they have turned the corner on that front, we have to recalibrate how we see Texas and where this program's going, because we've seen the offense, and we knew the offense was going to be fun under Sarkisian. Now the defense is coming together. Now you see the path of where this all comes together, and Texas is legitimately on the right track back to college football playoff contention. What do you make of all that, Matt?
Yeah, multiple things from what you said. This could go back to the Gene Chizik, Will Muschamp days of Texas defense when they actually used to play some defense. But I was definitely impressed by Texas's defense in this one. But the first thing you said of the people that Quinn Ewers, if Quinn Ewers was healthy, they win this game, I'm raising my hand.
I knew you were.
They're winning this game by 2 touchdowns. They might blow out Alabama if Quinn Ewers is playing. Like, he only played the first quarter. So, yeah, they could have made halftime adjustments, but he still had a whole second quarter where he could have gone off. Like, I feel like this is, Alabama fans, I'm sure will tell you, win is a win. Nick Saban will scold his fan base for, when I got here, we were just happy to win a game. Now it's not enough points. It's, I can see that already happening. And that's truth to some extent, but we all understand college football and kind of why that is the standard that Alabama established, because they're just always so talented and they destroy people. So yeah, it is kind of a red flag when you're winning games by 1 touchdown, like they did all last year. Like, it wasn't the most dominant performance. And so this year, with the offensive line already being a question to start this year, like, I've seen nothing to make me think that's going to get better. Like, you can't take away the 81-yard touchdown, right? Like, it happened, but you can just take it out for calculation purposes. And without that run, they had 23 carries for 80 yards. Like, they just weren't really able to do anything on the ground, and there's just no playmakers on this defense. Like, we're used to seeing teams with 4 first-round receivers and 2 eventual first-round running backs all on the same roster. And this team, I don't think it has right now. Like, we could see an impact when they're fully healthy and the Louisville transfer is in there. But, like, Jermaine Burton, you really got nothing from him. So many drops from this receiving core, not creating separation. Like, there were so many times where it seemed like Bryce Young had time to throw, but nobody was open. And Jahmyr Gibbs, to me, is the only guy that when he had the ball in his hands, it's like that guy looks like an Alabama playmaker. Like, he looked like an elite player. every other player on this offense, they're fine. Like they just don't have any difference makers at receiver or tight end. So I don't see, like, obviously Bryce Young, he's one of the best players in college football, if not the best player in college football. So they still have him, and the quarterback is super important. But I think this is a siren going off if I'm an Alabama fan right now. Like, Texas is not going to be the best team they play, especially not a Texas without a quarterback for the last 3 quarters. Like, Texas with Quinn Ewers, like, I'm not saying like a whole Texas is back, but the way they looked in that first quarter, Texas with Quinn Ewers could be one of the best teams Alabama plays all season. Like, they look much improved, and I was so impressed by Quinn Ewers. But they basically played a team without a quarterback for the last 3 quarters, and outscored them 10-0 in the last 3 quarters, or no, it's 10-10 the last 3 quarters. So yeah, I would be very worried if I was an Alabama fan right now.
The thing on the flip side, though, is the defense is really good. Will Anderson made some big plays late. I'm not worried about the
secondary, though.
Yeah.
The secondary was getting torched, and they were supposed to have like 4 guys that were first or second team All SEC. Like, not putting anyone on blast, but Kool-Aid McKinstry, like, I feel like he's a name. He's a 5-star prospect, and his name's Kool-Aid, and so we voted him first team All SEC. Like, this guy is nowhere close to a first team All SEC corner. Like, I'm not even sure he's a good corner. Like, Texas, like, Xavier Worthy was absolutely exposing this secondary, and he's a star receiver. But there's other receivers that are that good. Like, there's a lot of other receivers that the team's best receiver is on that level that can have a legitimate deep threat. And unless Alabama was interfering, like, I don't feel like they were really guarding any Texas receivers. And I think that's why you saw early in the game they were getting away with a lot of pulling and tugging and everything. And then once they started to call it, it's like, well, yeah, they're doing it every time. Like, and so I was not impressed with Alabama's secondary. I think they could get thrown on a lot this year. Like, they might not face a lot of quarterbacks as good as Quinn Ewers, because he looked really good, but they're going to face some good quarterbacks this season.
Also, Isaiah Nair, this is the kind of game where he would have feasted in the slot, who they lost just before the season, the prized transfer at Wyoming. He did not obviously play, and he's out for the year, but that would have been one to watch in this one. I will say, you mentioned the running back aspect of this, and Jahmyr Gibbs was Bryce Young's favorite target in the passing game. You're seeing this with your team. I think this is an interesting wrinkle that I jotted down to. This is something to monitor throughout the course of the season. The highest graded receiving back in college football to this point is Kenny McIntosh, and it's not even really close. But also in the top 10 is Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jahmyr Gibbs is lining up outside. Kenny McIntosh is probably going to be Stetson's favorite target, not named Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. Like, it's going to be a little bit different because Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to get more opportunities than McIntosh. But I do think it's interesting that both these teams are going to utilize their running back in the passing game so much. And if you go up and around the SEC, not many other programs are doing that. Like, Tank Bigsby is more like he's the focal point of that Auburn offense, and he's having success, but it's running the football. It's not catching stuff out of the backfield all that much. So I am curious to see if that's a trend of more and more of the elite programs utilizing their backs more as receivers than they had in the past.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. And I think you see it in the NFL a lot. I think there's a lot of ways in recent history where the college game has kind of impacted the way the NFL game is being played. And I think that's an aspect that the pro game is affecting the college game. Like, if you have this dynamic playmaker in the backfield and you're not able to create running lanes for him, or you're getting predictable rundowns or something like that, like, just find a way to get him the ball. Because he's a running back once he has the ball, and he can make people miss, and he can just, especially if you're out on the outside, like, he can make corners miss a lot better than he can make maybe some big linebackers miss too. So yeah, I've been really impressed with Kenny McIntosh, the way Georgia's been using him this year. He has like 35 yards rushing, I think, in the first 2 games, and like 180 receiving yards. So that is an interesting wrinkle, but yeah, and I think. Like, as good as Jahmyr Gibbs looks, I feel like if a team only has one playmaker, like, I feel like you can shut him down. And so Jahmyr Gibbs, I feel like Texas was not ready for him to just they were just passing it to him. And it felt like that was something that Texas wasn't prepared for. But moving forward, like you got to put somebody on this guy because they want to throw it to him. So shout out to like how Hudson Card, he was dinged up in this one too. He kept playing. So shout out to how the effort he gave. But once he came in the game, Texas was just a completely different team, and they did not threaten Alabama's defense really at all. So it's hard for me to hype up Alabama's offense or defense too much because, for one, I feel like Will Anderson didn't have much of an impact on this game, and they scored 10 points in the first quarter with Quinn Ewers. They may have been shut out or had 10 the rest of the game, or 9 points the rest of the game, but they were a completely different team when Quinn Ewers was on the field.
There you go. Next, where do you want to go next, Matt Green?
I think we got to go with your guys. I think Tennessee Pitt was one of the games of the weekend.
Whew. Okay, so I predicted 24 in this one.
Blowout city.
Not wrong. So just
wrong.
Not wrong. So here's the take.
Oh my God.
You got to watch this. You had to watch the whole game. Tennessee was a three touchdown better team in this one. Tennessee did some stuff. They had muffed a punt in the second half. They had a fumble on their biggest run of the day. They had another fumble. Hendon Hooker just doesn't throw picks. Like, the man has not thrown a pick since like the Reagan administration. But those 3 turnovers were backbreakers, Matt Green. Like, just giving Pitt all these opportunities.
Did those turnovers not happen in the game? Were those not a part of the game?
We lost the turnover battle. That was it. But if you look at the game and look at the moments where it was like, oh my God, you just kept waiting for Tennessee to blow this team out because the offense was just putting the defense in hole after hole. Defense, Matt Green. 4 sacks, 16 quarterback hits, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery, 9 tackles for loss. I mean, Tyler Barron and Byron Young were absolute madmen on the edge. Byron Young, SEC defensive lineman of the week. Cedric Tillman, I think, was the offensive player of the week for Tennessee. He got targeted a billion times. Like, he's just a cheat code on the outside. There's like, when we see the Malachi Starks versus Cedric Tillman matchup later this year, it's going to be interesting because Tillman's size is just not fair. And Brew McCoy had a great one. Pat Narduzzi.
Keely Ringo then on the outside.
Well, there you go. Like, whoever it is, like, well, then you're putting Malachi on Brew, and we'll see how that goes. Because Brew is also gigantic.
I like Malachi Starks' chance against anybody, but we'll keep you go. I'll let you keep on this game.
Pitts, they did some dumb stuff in this one. I mean, they missed a bunch of field goals too. Their kicker was awful. What they mentioned, it's like, oh, well, Keaton Slovis got knocked out and Patty was messed up and he was hurt in this one. It's like, well, the reason was because Tennessee was getting all kinds of insane pressure. And this is something we did not see last year. Like, Tennessee was not a pressure team. They did not create a lot of havoc plays. And they did in this one, where I was blown away because they were very vanilla the week prior against Ball State at home with what they tried on the defensive line. Byron Young got better each quarter. Like, Byron Young is just one of the best players in the SEC, just period. And Tyler Barron had a shot on Keaton Slovis that I think actually took him out. Wesley Walker had a big sack in this one. Trey Flowers had one of the more acrobatic interceptions in the back of an end zone that you'll ever see. Warren Burrell had a rough game. Once again, he got targeted and picked on a lot. But the other thing with Pitt, they had the 70-whatever yard touchdown run early. They get up early. That was it, though. Like, they just had these like random explosive plays, and then it was it. And then Pitt was shut down for a while, and I felt like I was taking crazy pills, Matt Green, because I was just, this game should not be close. This game should not be going to overtime. This game should not be I think it's one of those games where it's on the road, and Tennessee, this is one of the biggest road wins for Tennessee football in a long time. Like, this has been rare, like, for Tennessee to go on the road against a ranked team and steal a victory, and they did it. Outside non-conference road game, I should say, and they pull it off. They get vengeance over what happened last year, and they lost this dumb game last year. Remember, at home, where it was back and forth, and Tennessee really should have won that one. Tennessee won ugly, which is a step forward. Where every game's not gonna be clean. Like, even though my final score is like a clean game is how it goes. Like, if Tennessee plays clean, they win that game 45-24. I think if that game is in Knoxville, it goes 45-24 this year. That all being said.
That's where, I'll let you finish.
And the last thing I'll say is Pitt deserves a lot of credit for fighting hard. Pat Narduzzi does not deserve credit for whining at halftime where he's just like, Brew stepped out, blah, blah, blah. Watch the broadcast. It's very clear. Brew was pushed out by the cornerback and then comes back in. Like there's just no question. Why are you even still whining about that? Like Brew is not out. He's pushed. That was one of the weirdest, just consistent complaints. And he challenged it obviously, and he lost. And you're still whining. I would have fined him just for whining after losing the challenge. Like stop whining.
I don't know what that rule is as far as like how much they need to be forced out.
Yeah,
because it looked like it was very minimal contact. But it seems like if there's any contact from the defender and that's what makes him go out of bounds, then that is like by definition being forced out.
Right. It's just a weird thing to complain about. And also, look, Tennessee's big out wide. You're going to get mossed a lot this year. Brew McCoy and Cedric Tillman are large human beings, and they're gonna moss you every now and then. And it's just how it goes, Matt Green. But a win is a win, and Tennessee is now going to be favored in every single game the rest of the way except Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah, I believe that. So lots to unpack there from what you said, but I got to go back to the very first thing you said of not being wrong. So look at the numbers here. Turnover battle was 2-2.
Yep.
Total yards 416 to 415. Pitt missed 2 field goals. Like, that's not a game that just Tennessee dominated but didn't dominate the score line. Like, I can't get with you on that one.
Hold on, take away the 75-yard run. Take away the big run.
But you can't those plays away. They happen.
Well, no, that's like, you got to look at the drives and like drive after drive where it's like they're not really doing much. It's like Pitt would score because Tennessee put themselves in this crazy hole. Like Tennessee, I think, had 3 consecutive scoring drives that ended with touchdowns and then a field goal. And they got the ball back and they like ran it out at the end of the half and Pitt got the ball to start the second half and Tennessee didn't score. But I mean, Pitt deserves credit because Tennessee, just when they imploded in the second half, they only had 3 points. Like Tennessee only scored 3 points, but it was 24-17 going to the half. If you excuse that chunk play, that crazy long run where he just breaks through, Israel, how do you pronounce his name? Abanikanda.
How are they? Abanikanda, I think it was it.
Yeah, something. And he got through, and that was great. And then the big tight end run where he hopped over, who was it? I think it wasn't.
That was like the play of the
Trey Flowers
play of the weekend. Like that was incredible.
Yeah, Bartholomew. But those were 2 of their big plays. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, Abanikanda, however you pronounce his name, he still had 150 yards rushing. Like outside, take away that 75-yard run.
Well, take away that 75-yard rushing, he's averaging like 2 yards a carry.
He's got 24 for another 75, 80 yards. But regardless, I mean, their quarterback got hurt at halftime, right? And like, I'm not saying it just spontaneously happened. Tennessee made it happen, but it doesn't change the fact that it did happen. And their offense was just significantly worse once he left the game because they couldn't get much from their second string quarterback who also got injured. And he seemed to be injured even worse than Keaton Slovis was. But if anyone is going to claim to be right about this one, it's your boy right here, man. Do you not remember my exact prediction for this game was that it was going to go exactly how the Pittsburgh game went, except for Tennessee was going to lead the game-winning drive at the end instead of throwing the pick 6 like West Virginia did. This game, West Virginia Pitt, was 31-31 with 3:41 to go, and West Virginia took the field for the game-winning drive, which unfortunately for them turned into a pick 6. This game was 27-27 with 2:23 to go, with Tennessee getting the ball for a game-winning drive. Unfortunately, they punted it away, and then obviously we had overtime. But if that's not a spot-on prediction for how this game was going to go, man, I don't know what is.
It was, I mean, look, you got to win dumb. And when you look around the league, like I wasn't even mad anymore. Like when you look around how the rest of this weekend went for so many other programs, just be glad you survived. Just be glad you got the win and you're going home this week against Akron. And we got Florida at the 3:30 spot. on Saturday, and you just look at it, you're like, feel really good about Kentucky, feel really good about Florida. I mean, not a lot of concern the rest of the way here. So we'll see. I'm excited, but either way, 2-0, big win for the program. Tennessee is a top 10 team in the country right now, and
well, let's pump the brakes on Tennessee being a top
the
10 team.
defense
This
is
is a
right.
good win,
Like
but
Hendon Hooker has played a
how good
C.
is Pitt? Is Pitt a top 20 team?
I think they're probably top 25, yeah, somewhere around there.
Top 25? It's like you just went to overtime with maybe a top 25 team. I don't know if
It's a
that
huge win, man.
necessarily says. No, it's a big
On
win.
the
I'm not going
road.
to take anything away from them. But let's pump the brakes on top 10. We'll see.
I think they're a top 10 team, man. Moving forward, who's not a top 10 team? South Carolina and Arkansas, Matt Green. You can make the case probably Arkansas, but South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, after 2 games with the Gamecocks, 47 of 76, 603 yards, 2 TDs, 3 interceptions. It turns out that Spencer Rattler was not going to solve all of the Gamecocks' woes. The South Carolina offensive line stinks. This team they fought for a little bit in this game against Arkansas on the road, but Arkansas, the much better team, puts down South Carolina as the South Carolina hype train ceases to exist following this one. Matt Green, what did you make of South Carolina, Arkansas?
Yeah, I guess the biggest I already like Arkansas, so I don't know I necessarily learned that much from Arkansas this weekend. But I think the biggest thing I learned is just like South Carolina is just not. I do not think they're the team. And like a 2 touchdown loss to Arkansas doesn't mean they're not good. But I don't feel like this game didn't really feel like a 2 touchdown game. Like I know both teams scored a bunch in the fourth quarter and it got close. But South Carolina was just so bad for the first 2 quarters of this game. And Spencer Rattler is I'm not. They do not look like as dangerous of a team as I feel like a lot of people were predicting coming into the season.
He fumbled the ball 3 times, lost it once. I mean, they had 5 total fumbles in this one. They ran the ball 29 carries, 40 yards, 1.4 yards per carry. On the flip side, Arkansas, Raheem Sanders, huge day for him. KJ, always great on the ground too. 24 carries, 156 yards, 6.5 yards per attempt. They averaged 5 yards attempt as a team, almost 300 yards in the ground. They just buried you. They're just a really, really good football team. And I would say like something else coming out of this weekend is that Mississippi State and Arkansas, I think we can just pencil in are legit. Like these 2 teams are the teams that we should have given more credit to going into the year and like pushed away the LSUs, the A&Ms and company where it's like, no, Mississippi State and Arkansas know exactly who they are. Arkansas is going to run the ball down your throat, play great defense, and just not make dumb mistakes. Like 3 incompletions total for KJ, doesn't throw picks, that sort of thing. Just super, super efficient and competent. Same with Mississippi State, just with throwing the football. They're like, our defense is great. We know exactly who we are. Will Rogers is not going to dance around, run in the pocket, no matter what. And we're just going to do what we need to do. And we're going to win 9 games. Both these programs, I just feel like are winning 9 games this year. They're the programs that they're just not sexy, not flashy, but they are the not Alabamas of the SEC West, where I think they're the leaders of the tier 2 in the SEC West.
See, I can't put Mississippi State on that level with Arkansas yet. I feel like just the way Arkansas is constructed, I feel like they have more legit talent just in terms of, recruiting and just the talent they have on their team. They just seem like a much more sustainable, like they seem like they have a significantly higher floor than Mississippi State does. Like Mississippi State's looked good to start the year, like going out west. Like we did predict Arizona to give them a hard time. Part of it, though, I think was our disrespect for Mississippi State and Mike Leach and just kind of something weird is going to happen going out west. It wasn't a lot of tangible, like Arizona's going to beat them because they can, utilize these aspects of the game plan or something. So I don't want to overreact on Mississippi State. Like, yeah, it's a good win. You need to win the games that you're supposed to win, which Mississippi State doesn't always do. So, it's a good win, but I got a lot more to remains to be seen before I put Mississippi State in Arkansas's category.
That's fair. Where are we going next, Matt Green?
You tell me. Let's go. One of the bigger upsets with Notre Dame. I feel like, oh man. So Notre Dame is my reason. This is going to turn into a bigger conversation about the NCAA timeline, right? So Marcus Freeman is now 0-3. They're counting the bowl game. Really 0-2 because he's now the head coach to start this season. Ohio State, obviously not a bad loss, but to lose to Marshall this weekend, the way they did, like, this is just not this Notre Dame team does not look good. This offense just looks absolutely terrible. Like, I don't know. I don't see this offense getting better. Like, I don't know who the next quarterback they can magically throw. Like, just wave your wand and make him fix the offense. Like, I just don't know what's going to happen for Notre Dame. And I feel like they have a lot to be concerned about. I'll let you give your thoughts on Notre Dame before I make it into a bigger conversation.
Well, it's good to be a corner named Stefan Gilmore. That's a good thing we've learned in college football and just football in general. Stefan Gilmore, obviously of South Carolina, longtime NFL corner, one of the best. And then Mr. Gilmore, one of the best college corners this year, has a big pick in this one, a pick 6 against the Fighting Irish. I would agree. So this was something that with Notre Dame before the year where we were doing our previews, and something that I mentioned and something that I thought was a mistake by Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman retaining Tommy Rees and the offensive staff, I thought was certainly a decision, because one of the annoying parts of the Brian Kelly era was just the stubbornness in terms of how they just could never develop a quarterback, and they could never develop this fun offense that could get them over the hump and actually beat a Georgia, Ohio State, a Alabama come college football playoff time, because Ian Book and the guys that they were throwing out, the offense was just not explosive enough to run with the big boys. The defense was there. The offensive line was there. They tight ends are just always coming into South Bend, but the quarterback stuff has not worked. And to not go outside the box, I think, and to use that opportunity this offseason and be like, all right, we're shifting the offensive approach. We're not doing this kind of stale Tommy Rees era quarterback stuff, especially with a quarterback like Tyler Buchner, whose main thing is not being able to go downfield. Like, he's not a pass first quarterback. And it seems like Tommy Rees, and they're kind of running this pass first offense with him, and they don't have the guys out wide. Like, they don't even have the receivers to do this, what they're trying to do. So I think it's just an absolute mess offensively. So the defense is fine. The defense is going to keep them in games week to week, but I think Tommy Rees they have to make an offensive change. If Marcus Freeman's going to turn this ship around this offseason, he has to look at this and go, all right, if we're going to recruit, because I think they're number 1 in recruiting right now for the 2023 class.
Yeah, they're up there.
You're going to fall in the Jimbo trap, and we'll get to Texas A&M in a second, but it's like, yeah, it's great to recruit all these players, but if you're still running an offense from 2014, you're going to get beat by Marshall. You're going to get beat by some of these other programs that have evolved. Like, you have to evolve, and Marcus Freeman has to make that big change to be like, look, I understand Rees is a Notre Dame guy and it's going to ruffle some feathers or whatever, but like, we got to go bring in somebody else. We got to liven this offense up. We got to we have to bring in our Todd Monken, basically, where we cannot play this way anymore. We have to evolve. Like, we just do. And I think that's like one of those lessons that you have to learn if you're Notre Dame after losing to Marshall at home, is like, this offense is not working in 2022, and we have to clear the deck this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why the hire is so interesting, because I mean, if I'm correct, like, Brian Kelly wanted Tommy Rees to come with him to LSU, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he turned him down to stay at Notre Dame. He's obviously a Notre Dame guy. So that's why it feels like Marcus Freeman just kind of like Notre Dame just wanted to keep the status quo. They're like, we're a program that's finished roughly top 10, like 5 years in a row. Let's just keep everything on track and continue to do that. So it didn't feel like a creative hire, like a progressive hire. And that's not to take anything away from Marcus Freeman, but this is also Notre Dame. Like, Notre Dame that's in a very good position. This isn't Tyrone Willingham taking over Notre Dame or Charlie Weiss taking over Notre Dame. Like, or even Brian Kelly, like, he's got to rebuild the whole tradition. Like, Notre Dame's in a really good spot. And this is what my bigger conversation about the NCAA timeline. you can't convince me that the NCAA timeline and the early signing day is not the reason why Marcus Freeman has this job right now. Like, it's a convenient hire. He was on the team. He's only there for 1 year, so it's not like he was just a mainstay of Brian Kelly by any means. But if the NCAA timeline is how I want it to be, and there is no December signing, the early signing is like before the season starts, maybe July, August, and then you don't have another signing until another signing day until March. So you have like a month after the NFL season is over and some of those coaching changes, the coaching carousel to play out. I'm just not convinced at all, if Notre Dame had all of their choices on the table, that Marcus Freeman would have been the guy who's never coached a game in college, would be the guy that's got this job. And I feel like Luke Fickell is a guy we talk about because he's like Midwest and he seems like he would be a Notre Dame guy or something, right? It's impossible for, in the current landscape of college football, for a program like Notre Dame to wait around for the college football playoff to happen and to say, like, we want Luke Fickell to be our next coach, but we're going to let everything play out. Kind of like the Falcons had to wait for Dan Quinn to coach in the Super Bowl as DC of the Seahawks before they could like officially negotiate with him, right? So I think just something needs to change, because like, not just because Notre Dame is having made a bad hire, potentially. It's games
early
in, for sure. But I think it's just it represents a huge problem if these programs feeling rushed to make a decision because you don't want to lose out on your entire recruiting class for this arbitrary mid-December signing day.
That's fair, and we'll see what happens ultimately. But I don't know. Freeman's going to have to make some big adjustments this offseason. Like, you got to make some tough offensive decisions because you're a defensive guy and you've got to nail that offensive coordinator hire. You cannot keep going with what you're doing, or you're just going to drive these Notre Dame fans insane, kind of like what A&M fans are going through right now.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Well, let's talk about A&M real quick because they're not on our list. They were not on our list because A&M that was just App State at home. You should just win this football game. This should not have been a crazy game. Let's group them together though, because no, let's not do that because like the Fun Bowl, we're just continuing the Sun Belt revenge tour here. We'll get to Nebraska after this because there was a 2-part fallout from the Nebraska loss. But in terms of A&M, Haynes King now in the bottom grouping. Along with a couple other interesting quarterbacks who've just been absolutely horrific to this point in the year. So there's 250 quarterbacks who have played enough snaps to get grades to this point to grade out and be worthy of getting a college football grade. Spencer Petras is the third worst PFF graded quarterback through 2 weeks. There's 250 Matt Green, third worst. But you know who fell on that list? Tyler Buckner is around that 250 player range. Spencer Rattler, I think, is like 230 something. Haynes King, also right there. Haynes King has been horrific. This offense has been horrific. Like, it took a kick return touchdown to get them back in this one. And you look at it and you're like, there's just talent everywhere. And the offense just is completely broken. We talk about the offense with Tommy Rees and Notre Dame. I think it's a lot of parallels what's going on in College Station, where it's just not 2014, 2015, 2013 anymore. And this has to change. Jimbo has to give up the offense and he has to go outside the box. Like maybe what we do, we bring Kevin Sumlin back, who he shares the record with basically to this point in his Texas A&M tenure, and let Kevin Sumlin call the offense.
I'll stop you right there. Almost shares the record with.
Yeah.
In the first 50 games, Jimbo is 35-15. Sumlin was 36-14.
There you go.
Let's just keep that in mind.
Oh my God. I mean, what did you make of this one? Because, I mean, obviously an awesome win for Chase Bryce, local Grayson kid, to go in there. And they had the heartbreaker last week to come back. I mean, the Chase Bryce with the way that ended, where he overthrew the dude at the goal line, and that when they were going for 2 and he's wide open, they win the game in regulation against UNC last week. If he doesn't make that easy overthrow, he comes right back and beats the Aggies on the road in College Station. And just what a colossal failure for this Aggie team, and colossal failure for the Jimbo era. And obviously he's not going anywhere. Like, you owe him a gajillion dollars for the foreseeable future. Like, just the buyout is insane. So Jimbo's not going anywhere. So you have to have like the tough conversation of like, dude, you cannot be the OC. Like, the offense has to go somewhere else now. We have to bring in somebody else. We have all this money. Hire a great offensive mind. Like, what are you doing? Just hire a great offensive staff.
I think the recruiting class he signed for 2022 keeps him his job until at least 2024 because that was such a ridiculous class. You have to at least get to the third year of this insane class. So that bought him some time, but I'm glad we're kind of doing this A&M Notre Dame thing at the same time, because Notre Dame is perennially talked about as the most overrated program in college football. Texas A&M should get all of the energy that Notre Dame gets. Like the last 10 years, they've had 6 years where they're ranked inside the top 10 at some point. They've had 1 year where they actually finished in the top 10. Like, we consistently rank them, in the top 10 in the preseason, and they win a couple of good games. So you overreact and put them top 5 or something. And they let down every year. I feel like they do the same thing every year. So, not to just have a lazy argument about Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher being the same program, but Jimbo Fisher is getting paid a lot of money, and he's getting paid that money to win the conference, right? To try to compete for national championships. I saw the SEC short video they put out this week. It was pretty good. And, A&M, they can still win the conference. This is a non-conference loss. All our goals are still in front of us. So yeah, you could say that and spin it that way, but this is hugely concerning for A&M, specifically because Jimbo is supposed to be an offensive guy. And we've seen several years in a row where the defense is the strength of the team and the offense is just ugly. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I've been hyping up Max Johnson the whole off season. We got to see Max Johnson. I was shocked that he didn't get, 1 rep in this game. Haynes King just does not look like that guy to me.
No, but it's also are we sure it's a Haynes King or a Max Johnson or the 5-star kid who just came in, or is it an offense thing? We don't know. What would Buckner look like in a Jamie Chadwell offense? What would these guys look like where the offense is actually built around their talent? I don't know. Now we're at the point where I don't know how much we should put on Haynes King versus how much we should put on Jimbo in the scheme that they're having these Texas A&M quarterbacks run. There's now a tradition of Texas A&M quarterbacks not looking good in this Jimbo Fisher era, whether it's Zach Calzada, Kellen Mond struggling, but just doing enough to win. I don't know. It's tough.
Now you're seeing a lot of the Jameis Winston talk too. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it was that Jimbo was 27-1 with Jameis Winston as his quarterback, and the offense doesn't look nearly as good when he doesn't have a number 1 overall pick running that offense.
Yeah, but we'll see. We shall see.
Also, one more thing. Shout out to Desmond Howard. R.I.P. to Desmond Howard, I should say. 3 of his 4 his ridiculous college football playoff prediction, 3 of his 4 teams have already lost week 2. Oh my God. Pittsburgh. Who is it? Pittsburgh, A&M, and Baylor all lost this weekend. He still got Michigan in there. So, yeah. Rough weekend for Desmond Howard's college football playoff prediction.
Also, didn't he pick Tennessee on Saturday? He picked Tennessee in the game day pick'em with Pitt.
He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know what he picked.
That was something I saw was he actually picked Tennessee to win the game, and he had a week prior put Pitt in the college football playoff. So, goodness gracious.
It's Stephen A. Smith picked the, I don't know if you saw that video, he's picked the Chargers to score the most points in the AFC West this weekend. And literally seconds later, he was asked to pick Raiders-Chargers, and he picked the Raiders. Chargers are going to score the most points, but they're going to lose to the Raiders. I don't know. Just standard stuff from Stephen A.
Next up, Matt Green, Georgia Southern. Hail Southern, Statesboro rise up. Who can only imagine what Statesboro, Georgia was like on Saturday night? Could not imagine what that was like in the borough. Following Clay Helton, good dude, been on the program, good friend of the program, Clay Helton. First coach fired last year, week 2, USC. Guess what? Returns the favor against Scott Frost, first coach fired at Nebraska. Woo! You go down at home to the Georgia Southern Eagles. Georgia Southern, there's a really good tweet from Stephen Godfrey that I think I sent you where it's like Georgia Southern learned how to throw a forward pass a couple weeks ago and Nebraska just couldn't stop it. Like, I mean, Clay Helton deserves all the credit in the world for what he pulled off here, but something that will be lost in this one is that like Casey Thompson's been much better than Adrian Martinez in Nebraska. And like Nebraska's offense was cooking. Like Casey Thompson's actually been one of the best college quarterbacks this year. And if you look at what Adrian Martinez has done to this point, he's kind of struggled a little bit in Manhattan, little Apple, even though they did just curb stomp the Mizzou Tigers over the weekend. But I don't know. I thought this needed to end. I said before the year that this would end for Scott Frost, where our point was that like that we've stressed in this podcast, Matt Green, if it just happens early now. Like if it's gonna work out, you're gonna see the results by year 2, year 3 at the latest. That like this is gonna work for a while. Like this is good. This is when it's year 5 and you're still not going bowling, and you're like, he's gonna turn the corner. Eventually, the math will add up. Eventually, he'll win some of these 1-score games. And then he doesn't.
And it depends on what your definition of like works is too. It's like, it doesn't have to win a conference in year 3. Like, you don't have to be in the playoff in year 4, but you got to have some winning seasons. Like what?
He got too long. Like it was just too long of a process. And Nebraska, to their credit, pulled the ripcord out early, and they were not going to get embarrassed again on national television. Have the whole week leading up to Nebraska, Oklahoma of like, are they going to fire Scott Frost? Are they going to fire Scott Frost? What is his future like? So Trev Alvers will make his first hire at Nebraska. A lot of the names who've been thrown out early. I mean, we've talked about Urban Meyer on this one, Matt Rule. The Panthers lose week 1 in embarrassing fashion to the Browns, and Jacoby Brissett. Seems like he's probably going to be on the chopping block soon, and that'd be a big hire. Matt Campbell's name has been thrown around. He do it. Mark Stoops is a name that I heard. That would be interesting. Lane Kiffin's my favorite wild card name because Lane, I mean, it's a better job than Ole Miss. There's no money at Ole Miss. There's still just a limit to what he can do there.
Is it a better job than Ole Miss?
Yeah, it's a better job. You can win at Nebraska still. The money is there. The department's there.
I don't know.
You can win at Nebraska, man. Nebraska is just, look at the history. Like, it was up until Scott Frost. Like, Mike Riley still had, a 10-win season at one point? Bo Pelini was churning out 9-win years. Like, the fan appetite's there, and there's a path. Like, Iowa, I mean, they've been knocking on the door at the College Football Playoff,
fair.
Wisconsin. But, like, you can win at Nebraska. It's just a more difficult way of winning. And I think Lane Kiffin, with his experience and dominating in the portal and that sort of thing, I would not hate that. Like, that's not a crazy hire to me. If you were able to lure Lane Kiffin away, I actually think that's a home run situation for them too. But
it's definitely a home run for them for sure. I just don't know that Lane Kiffin would leave.
Who is your favorite, and what did you make of the Nebraska loss to Georgia Southern on Saturday night?
Just embarrassing. Like it's hilarious, honestly, and I didn't even think about the Oklahoma thing. You're 100% right. That's why they did it, because they didn't want that to be the number one talking point of this whole anticipation of this big rivalry being renewed, or the second year in a row, right? They played this game. So yeah, it's just hilarious that they could have saved $7 million if they fired him after week 4, and they're like, no. I want this guy out of here right now. I'll pay it. I don't care how much it costs. I'll pay it. Get this guy out of here. So, obviously feel bad for Scott Frost. I saw it pointed out, somebody on Twitter was talking about him leaving UCF when he did. It's like he left UCF after a 13-0 season, while all 3 programs in the state were all down. And I think, and now you see UCF going to the Big 12. Like, you've seen UCF actually get legitimate recruits, like hit up the portal and get guys that were highly ranked recruits. So UCF, I feel like, is attracting more talent down in Orlando than Nebraska is up in Lincoln. So even with Scott Frost, so it's interesting that the fact that if he would have never left UCF, like who knows, they could have been the Cincinnati and making the playoff. Like it was a multiple year kind of campaign to get your team in that national conversation anyway. So from that perspective, I kind of feel for Scott Frost trying to go home and revitalize his alma mater. But in terms of guys they can get, Urban Meyer is definitely my number one pick. Like that would just be amazing because Urban Meyer needs somebody too. It's like a lot of these good coaches, it's like, why would I take that job? It's like I'm above that job. But Urban Meyer right now, I'm not sure he's above any job. And Nebraska, like you said, it's 100% a sleeping giant. I don't know that it can be awoken to the point that they used to be and actually compete for national titles. But shoot, if Urban Meyer went there, I would definitely not rule out Nebraska's shot to win a national title. Like I don't know how he can recruit in 2022 or what. Well, that remains to be seen. But Urban Meyer would be an amazing hire. Matt Campbell doesn't make much sense to me. Obviously, Nebraska has a higher ceiling than Iowa State, but it's like how much higher of a ceiling? Like he was getting Iowa State in Big 12 championship appearances, like with kind of limited talent, from a recruiting standpoint. Like Nebraska's not recruiting very well, so it feels like I'm just going to go over to another job where there's more pressure, where I'm getting the exact same talent base. And I don't really see what that necessarily does for Matt Campbell. Like when Michigan has been thrown out for his name, or like a Florida or something, like that made sense because he's going to increase the talent level that he can get at his school. Iowa State and Nebraska, it just seems like such a minimal jump that like might as well just stay where I've already established everyone likes me here. Like I've kind of built this into what it is. Nebraska seems like a pointless roll of the dice to me for Campbell.
We'll see what happens. I'm curious to see how in demand this job is. Like that is what I'm very curious about, to see what gets leaked of who's interested. I'm interested to see how interested a lot of the top names are, because think about it. Mike Riley was not a big name. Scott Frost, the only reason they got the big fish, Scott Frost was the big fish, is because he's a Nebraska guy. Like that was the reason that they got the big name this past time. Bo Pelini was not a big name. If you go back through the list, it's not like Nebraska gets these high profile coaches in the building. Like I'm very curious to see if it's like we're thinking big, like the Urbans or whatever. And then it's like, that's why I throw Matt Campbell out, where it might just be not the big sexy name. It's just kind of like you flip back. The reason I think it's going to be Matt Campbell is I think they're going to go back where they're like, okay, the homeward bound kid, like we just need stable. We need to get back to 8-4, 9-3. Who can like raise the floor, even if we're not sure about the ceiling and the recruiting and everything else? Matt Campbell will get us stable.
I think Matt Campbell definitely makes sense from Nebraska's perspective.
Yeah.
I'm saying Nebraska doesn't make sense from Matt Campbell's perspective.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So a great weekend ultimately for the Sun Belt, Matt Green.
What about you threw out Mark Stoops as well, right?
I did.
That's the only one that's like, in terms of a kind of proven name in college football right now, that like, yeah, maybe he'd be interested, but the way people talk about Mark Stoops is like he's got the best job in the country. So I'm not sure he's interested to leave either. The only reason Urban's really thrown out there is because he's been kind of blacklisted in his own right. So like Nebraska gives him a little incentive to get back into the coaching, but I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Will Levis and Anthony Richardson had a rock fight in the swamp over the weekend, Matt Green. This is another one of our big ones. This is bad. Like Will Levis and Anthony Richardson now 11th and 10th in total QBR in the SEC through 2 weeks. This was a rough game, and it depends on how you want to spin it. Was this just a great defensive showing by both teams in this one in the swamp, or was it just like some really rough offenses where like the lack of Chris Rodriguez showed through for the Kentucky Wildcats, and Will Levis was fine, just not an elite quarterback in this league still. And you look at the Gators and Anthony Richardson, when they take away the run, Oof, that Florida offense is very, very one-dimensional, and I think this is going to be a problem for the Gators. I don't know. What did you make of this one? Like I picked Kentucky to win, and I didn't. I thought the Florida Gators would come back down to earth a little bit just because we just did not see it through the air. Where like Kentucky's going to box them up. Like they're a bad matchup for Florida right now. And shout out to Mark Stoops. The history of Kentucky Florida is all Florida. Last 5 matchups, Kentucky's 3-2. Like he's turned the narrative. Like Kentucky's just he deserves all the credit in the world. Big Mark Stoops guy. But both these like I don't want to get ahead of the Florida game on 3:30 in 2 weeks, but Kentucky, if that's the offense they're throwing out there in Neyland in a month and a half, like you're getting boat raced. Like this is they have to clean this up. They have to. You talked about this, the one dimensional look from the Kentucky Wildcats, where you can't win like that. You can't win in the SEC like that. When you look at the top of the standings and everything else, I don't know. The quarterback play in this one was bad, and I think both programs should feel a little nervous about what they can actually be this year with these quarterbacks. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from your first point, like, is this an evenly matched game, or like, yeah, was it just were these two good teams, or were they two good defenses? That sort of. I feel like this felt just like the Utah Florida game, which was why I was so confused on why the polls reacted so dramatically to this game, and honestly reacted to this Kentucky game too. Like you saw Florida go from unranked to like what, number 12 or something in 1 week. And I just kind of felt like our eyes, like two teams can be evenly matched and the defense can be matching what the offense is doing, but your eyes can see like this offense is not good, you know? So it was weird that we were still sure Utah was good. Florida's really good. We got to bump them up there to top 12, you know? And now after this one, I think Florida drops to what, 18, and we see Kentucky jump all the way to 9, and it's just like, did either of these teams look good? Like we could see that neither of these offenses was really doing anything. So it was just, I don't know. I was very, especially the pick six. This is one of the worst pick sixes you'll see that Anthony Richardson threw in this Kentucky one. So yeah, I did not come away very like necessarily impressed by either of these teams. I felt like you said, a rock fight, and the trend I pointed out before the game, before we previewing this game, it continued in for the fourth straight year. The team that won the rushing battle actually lost this game. So it's kind of weird for two teams that seem like they both want to be physical and run the ball. So, but the number one thing, like you said, this is supposed to be 2 top 10 quarterback prospects, like Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. Like, I just don't see it. Like,
Yeah.
This is
Anthony Richardson, man, has a completion percentage of 51.7% through 2 games. That's dead last among all Power 5 quarterbacks right now.
Like, Kentucky is a good team, right? This can be far from the best defense that Anthony Richardson plays this season. And you know, he played Utah last week. Like, yeah, we know this guy's athletic and he can run, but he just still has so much more to prove as a passer. And I don't know. After this Kentucky, it's also at home. Both of these games being at home, like, are you going to be more comfortable when you got to go on the road in some of these SEC environments? I'd be a little worried if I was a Florida fan. Like, this is a big win for Kentucky. Like, had so many decades. It's like Georgia was there for a few years. Like, Florida was dominating Georgia for 2 decades. It didn't matter if you beat a Florida team that wasn't going to a bowl game. It was a big win for Georgia. So I feel like Kentucky's kind of in the same neighborhood with that. Like, they were getting just absolutely destroyed by this program for 5 years. Like, it doesn't matter if this is a bad Florida team. And we don't know if it will be. It doesn't look like a great one, but it'll always be a big win for Kentucky to go down in the swamp and get a W.
Next up, Matt Green. This is the last one we'll spend a lot of time on, I guess, is the Iowa situation. What happened? Matt Campbell gets over the Iowa hump. He finally wins the Cy-Hawk Trophy is what we call this one. Big win for the Clones, so that's nice on one hand. On the other hand, I mentioned the Spencer Petras stat. This is just horrific. The worst offense in the country. Iowa, we're reaching a crazy breaking point right now where it has to be a bit what's going on in Iowa. Just it has to be a bit by Brian and Kirk Ferentz because, and the other thing too that I thought was funny. Okay, so this was something from Chris Hassel of CBS Sports. He tweeted this quote: "The only thing keeping me alive this season is the long battle between Iowa's offense and Charlie Jones." And for folks who may not remember, Charlie Jones was an Iowa receiver. He transferred to Purdue. Iowa has 316 total yards to this point, 1 touchdown. Charlie Jones has 286 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns for Purdue through 2 weeks. So it's going to be a never-ending battle between one wide receiver from Iowa, now at Purdue, versus the entire Iowa offense. It is an absolute joke what's going on in Iowa. The fact that, I mean, nepotism hires, never good. But also, this is why you don't do it, because this is just an absolute disaster that you have to fix. Like, you just have to fix. And I wonder, like, what if we get to the point where Kirk Ferentz is like, you want to fire my kid so bad? Guess what? We're both leaving. I'm the longest tenured head coach in college football in the FBS. Like, I'll just right off in the sunset. I'm not firing my kid, so you're going to lose us both. Good luck in the future.
Hey, that
without
reminds me of one Shanahan. That's a quality nepotism hire right there.
That's true.
He worked out. Better coach than his dad, he kind of looks like.
But the difference, though, is they were both offensive guys. And, like, his dad was a great offensive coach, and Kyle was a great offensive coach. Brian and Kirk are different. Kirk's a great defensive coach. Like, they Iowa defense every single year. Brian's calling the offense. This is different.
Well, and it's also just crazy how close they still were to winning this game.
Yeah.
Like, if they don't fumble, what was that, on the 1 yard line in the third or fourth quarter? On a second and third and goal, they fumble going into the end zone, and then they miss a field goal that could have forced overtime. So, like, even with having 150 total yards and whatever, did they have less than that against South Dakota State last week?
I think so.
And they're really close to being 2-0. So this offense is just embarrassing. This is another game I feel like we were picking based on just something weird. Like, Iowa is not a good team, but it felt like they were just going to find some magic and beat Iowa State. But and shoot, they almost did it, even though they only had 150 yards of offense.
Goodness gracious. We'll skim through a couple other ones. We had BC, who gets embarrassed. Their offense sucks. They lose to Virginia Tech. I have this from BC Interruption, the great Boston College blog. Quote, this is what they wrote at the end of their recap of this game. "Let's not mince words. This Boston College team does not look like it will reach bowl eligibility. 5-7 is probably an optimistic prediction. These games against Rutgers and Virginia Tech, both losses, were supposed to be some of the easiest on their schedule. After what should be a given win against Maine next week, shout out to the Bears, where will the wins come from? The weakest remaining teams on BC's schedule are UConn, then Duke, and Syracuse. Even those ACC teams are at BC's level or better than the Eagles this year. Unless there are some drastic improvements from the offensive line, this BC team will not even approach a winning record. Really, BC OL coach Dave DeGilamilo should be fired and left in Blacksburg. Even with BC's OL losses this offseason, this level of play is unacceptable. It's that bad." So things are worse than ever in Boston College for Jeff Hafley's crew. We have Houston upset by Texas Tech. Huge first win for Jay McGuire. Houston goes down there. They flirted with disaster the week prior. Just a rough state of affairs there. Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders has a good game against the Sun Devils. They win that one. USC, the offense looks great. Jordan Addison, Caleb Williams have a big first half. Thing I'll note there, that defense still stinks. Tanner McKee and Stanford were able to do a lot of different stuff to USC. USC is going to lose a game, maybe 2, maybe 3, because that defense still sucks and are going to give up a lot of points. We also had Mississippi State, they mentioned. They go and take care of Zona with ease, although you will see the best interception of the year thrown in that game by Jaden DeLaura, where he ran 97 yards. He pulled the Seneca Wallace and then threw a pick at the end of it. I don't know if you saw that, Matt Green, but it was top notch. And then Baylor going down at BYU. BYU, here's my point. You ready for this, Matt Green? BYU is the best team in the Big 12 this year. They were the kings of the Pac-12 last year. People forget that they were the best Pac-12 team last year, outside of maybe Utah. Guess what? They are the kings of the Big 12, I think, beating the Big 12 champs last year in the Baylor Bears. And BYU, maybe a top 10 team in the country. Huge win for the for BYU in that one, the Cougars. So
yeah, that was a good one. I was kind of surprised with myself that I made it awake all the way till overtime of that game. But yeah, that was a good one. And then on those same lines, also got to give love to the North Carolina Tar Heels. I think they're going to win the Sun Belt Conference this year. 2 solid conference wins to start the season.
Insane that they survived both those games with that defense. Like, the North Carolina experience is unlike anything other this year, man. Well, let's get our stickers of the week, Matt Green, helmet stickers. For me, my 2, Cedric Tillman, who got a billion targets and was just a godsend, the game winner in this one in overtime. Chase Bryce also getting redemption following a rough ending at home against North Carolina a week prior, going into College Station and winning. Who were your 2, Matt Green?
I got to give the first helmet sticker. I'm gonna split this between JJ McCarthy and Jim Harbaugh. We all thought, what is this Harbaugh guy doing? I've never heard of announcing one starter for the week 1 and another starter the week 2. Like, this is just unheard of. And you saw this Michigan offense come out and score 42 points in the first half. JJ, it's obviously playing against Hawaii, but we didn't see that with Cade McNamara at quarterback. And so this was the hard decision to make. JJ McCarthy was 11 of 12, 229 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And now he's been announced as the starter going in week 3 moving forward. So it was a very criticized move, but I want to hype up Jim Harbaugh for making the tough decision and getting JJ McCarthy in there. And then the other one, much to your chagrin, I believe is the expression, got to hype up Nick Patty for Pittsburgh. This guy was injured. He was legitimately injured, and he was out there hobbling around, just like doing what he could to help this team win. This Pittsburgh offense just looked absolutely just like helpless the last 2 quarters of this game. This man was limping, like legitimately limping to hand the ball off to the running. He looked like an old man out there trying not to get hurt. And he put an absolute dime in the end zone, like a little sidearm through a nice little tight window to tie the game in the 4th. Like, playing on one foot. I gotta give Nick Patty some love. I was rooting for that guy. He was just hobbling all around the field. Backup quarterback. Pittsburgh, who knows if a little more healthy quarterbacks, who knows if they could have pulled that one out.
Well, ultimately they did not, and the good guys came through at the end when it mattered most. Matt Green, any other big games that we missed in our week 2 recap show?
No, I think you covered it all, man. I think it's still a nice little week. Not I want to say week. A little light schedule we still had this week. I want to criticize myself though, because I was supposed to be building a fence on digging holes. I did do that on Sunday. We thought we were going to do it on Saturday, and I was like, that's the only day your parents can help, then yeah, I'm cool with it. I will set up a TV so we can kind of keep up with stuff. But because I'm like, yeah, it's not that great of a slate, and as soon as you start questioning how good of a slate it is on Saturday, that's when we get one of these crazy weekends of college football. Almost saw Texas upset Alabama, and then all these other Sun Belt teams just going nuts on college football. So I gotta criticize myself. I think like Josh Pate says, every given Saturday, you gotta be there. You gotta be tuned in, because you're always gonna see something good in college football.
That's true. That is true. For that guy down there in Tequila, Georgia, Matt Green, follow him on Twitter at Matt_W_Green. Follow myself at Chase_Thomas. And of course, leave this show a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if that is how you indeed listen. And check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Matt Green, our preview show later on this week will be our last for a week, as I go to get married and go on my honeymoon. So I will be gone for our recap show, but then we'll be back. So we'll only miss the recap show on Sunday, but we'll still get our picks in. So we'll be able to talk about those on our preview show the following week. So,
shoot. Do I need to give the listeners our results
there we
real
go.
quick? Yeah, yes. It was not a great week for either of us on the pick'em. So both of us went 4-7 against the spread. not what you want. And then I was 6-5 overall, and you were 7-4 overall.
That's what we like to see.
So you are 12-11-2 against the spread to my 11-12-2 against the spread on the season. And I'm 14-11 overall, and you were 20-5 overall.
20-5, Matt Green.
Yes, sir. And Zeus has fallen to 0-2. His Purdue pick, that one almost hit, but Arizona, they were giving him a game for a while. But
there weren't a lot of good home dogs for Zeus to pick from this week, though.
That's true. He did say that he wasn't crazy about any of those dogs. So those are the ones he was just
you were showing him those different logos, and he was like, Arizona, what are we doing? Is that the slate we got for us? Like, you're really backing me into a corner here.
Zeus looks like a bear, and so the bear down thing, so that's why he chose Arizona. So we got to get him better analysis. You need to be picking your teams for better reasons than that.
There you go.
I'll work with him.
Okay. Well, we got a full season. Matt Green. That's one of your assignments. And yeah. All right, Matt Green. Always a pleasure. Thank you, and I will talk to you in a couple days.
Yes, sir.